We don't drink tea, my dear.
No, okay, not quite. I don't drink tea much either, to be honest. All right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Chiropractic Student Podcast. Today we are joined by Dr. Stefaan Vossen. Have I said that right?
Well done, well done. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Such a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I saw you, and many did see you talk and hear you talk at the UCA. Really inspiring, and so I just had to have you on the show. Thank you so much for giving your time this evening to help not only myself but others understand your story.
Absolute pleasure, Lewis. And actually, on that was a lot of fun. That conference, I really enjoyed that, and the response was really beautiful, and actually very topical on this podcast. Got the opportunity to speak with a lot of students afterwards, and in a way, there was actually a part of me that felt. And I realized that there was a lot of interest in what people like I are doing, and I would really encourage students to reach out to the clinicians, myself included, if you think I've got anything interesting to say, but any senior clinicians out there, because you know what, it's you boys and girls that keep us fresh. Make no mistake, we need you. We might sometimes respond like we're being annoyed by you, but actually ignore it and persist. Absolutely keep driving, because sometimes you got to understand, we've got other things to do, and we've got a lot of priorities screaming at us as people that often own a practice or operate a practice. So just persist, knock on our doors until we say yes, please.
That's literally what I did. I've been messaging you since I think February, March time, and so it's took a couple of months to get us here, but we've been talking in between, and so yeah, I totally agree. Real simple, like just to start off, how did you find chiropractic? Where did you study, and how was university for you? How did you get through?
So how did I find chiropractic? Is this the genesis story? Yeah, this is
but
how
everyone's is a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me the an outline of it, like a nice a couple of minutes, not like a 20-hour conversation.
Exactly, I wouldn't do that to you. And I basically, my whole family is either in healthcare or restaurants, one of the two. And actually the two have a lot of overlap because they're both hospitality and service industries. And in a way, just like in a clinic, you can have a great setting and average cooking, or you can have an average setting with phenomenal cooking, and actually the reviews might be a little bit of might be the same across the two establishments. And what everybody tries to do is to have the best of both worlds: great setting, great service, and great quality food. And I think that has helped me a lot, having insight across that spectrum, and not just getting stuck in the clinical care provider and the clinical skill set mindset, and actually going into the service provision and almost like a hospitality mindset as well. So that was a benefit of growing up in my family, having both those sides to it. There are a lot of clinicians in my family, about 24, I think, chiropractors, osteopaths, physios, GPs, consultants, hip surgeons, and so on and so on. So the list is long. And again, that has also got its benefits, because you then very quickly start to have conversations around, well, why does all of this stuff work? And why do these different professions exist if all of it works? So that creates quite a few interesting, internal philosophical monologues. And again, that can be quite challenging to work through. But once you do work through it, again, it can be a very enriching experience. So, in a nutshell, in my family, you become a chiropractor or somebody in healthcare, and that is where our landscape sits. I obviously had my 16, 17-year-old rebellion and looked at getting into product design, which I found really interesting as well. Which again, travels well across the healthcare industry, because there are a lot of product design requirements. And I just started off in physiotherapy, actually, and studied at University of Ghent in Belgium, because I'm originally Belgian. and I found it interesting, and then specialized in neuro rehab, which was really interesting. But then I realized that actually, in terms of the work being done, oh, is my camera going there? Sorry about that. In terms of in terms of the work being done, I found that working as that kind of responsive work wasn't really that interesting to me. I wanted to look more towards preventative work, looking at understanding why back pain comes about in the first place, particularly chronic pain. I have a significant interest in. And then I decided to go and study chiropractic. I looked at a few universities, CMCC, Palmer, and then ACC. Decided to go with ACC. So we're talking 1997 now. So I'm well old. And I decided on the ACC for two very simple reasons, really. One is the European healthcare landscape is very different to the Canadian or the North American healthcare landscape. Primarily, you're thinking around how do you bill, how do you administrate, etc. Very different world. And then the second thing, obviously, I was living in Belgium at the time. Moving across to England was definitely a different kind of financial stress. Although in those days there was probably only about 10,000-15,000 pounds sterling a year difference in that exercise, but I decided to go with the ACC because I had family that graduated from there, liked the university, decided that they were definitely knocking on the right, maybe not in the not in the right ballpark, but they were playing the right game, and I thought that was really interesting. So that's when I then went to the ACC in '97. Graduated, did fairly well. Thought that at least, and a lot of people thought that too. And then 2003, I started working in a clinic in Rugby, which was actually an associateship position. Worked there for 6 years, became senior clinician, worked under a couple of great chiropractors at the time, learned a lot from them, learned a lot about administration again, looking at care pathways, started getting an interest in multidisciplinary work by working with some of the clinicians that were working and operating around us at the time. There was an osteopathy clinic, there was a podiatry clinic, there were some counselors that I had befriended and gotten to know. So that was the initial setting for me to start working in a multidisciplinary kind of way, although I wasn't obviously having it in-house, we were outsourcing that stuff. And then in 2009, I decided that I should set up my own clinic, which was both incredibly eye-opening and both mentally and financially painful. But as it turned out, for me at least, it was the right decision. And that's not just financially. In fact, financially, it was a terrible decision and still is, if you really want to look at it black and white. But in terms of the intellectual and the clinical work that was being done, it was absolutely the right decision for me. So a lot of the conversation that I would be having with you here today is really in that context of the multidisciplinary clinic, chronic back pain, with a keen awareness of how much we are a service industry as much as a health industry. And that is more or less the three big strands of what I'm all about, Lewis.
Yeah, so quite a fun journey. And the associate positions that you took, did you take them based on location or the clinic or the philosophy behind like why they were doing everything? How did you pick your associate position straight from university? And going forward, how did that help you with your career?
So that's a good question. How did I pick it? To be honest with you, although I am considered by a lot of people as a planner and a strategist and all the rest of it, the reality is that I do a lot of stuff by gut, and things either feel right and flow, or they don't. And of course, I make it sound a little bit more esoterical than it really is. Of course, there is a high level of planning and organization. But for me, particularly when you first graduate, you need to find somewhere where you feel at home, but at the same time that you realize this is not your forever home. It's a little bit like you're buying your first home. You've got, you're going for a 2-bed semi perhaps, or even fully detached if you're feeling really brave, and you can get a little bit fixated about the color of the fence, and it really doesn't matter that much. You can get sucked into the detail is what I'm trying to say, whereas we then forget to look at the big stuff and really need to embrace the opportunity to learn and work with certain people, and not always looking at the things you like. That is the slightly counterintuitive thing that I would say. You've got to try and identify challenges, things that you don't like, that perhaps even irritate you, and that those are really invitations for you to find out a little bit more about you and what you want, and maybe why you don't want certain things. So I joined a practice in this town called Rugby, which is in the center of the West Midlands. Lovely place. A lot of people, when I said I was going to go there, said, "Are you sure? Why would you go there?" And the reality is, I've never been sure of anything in my life. I just went with my gut, enjoyed it, worked with some great people. I didn't think of it as I would be there forever. I didn't think I would be there for 6 years either. But then I was there for 6 years because I was looking for things to learn. And that is the thing that I would say, if I was ever going to give a piece of advice to a new grad or somebody who's looking to move to another clinic for whatever reason, whether it is some kind of a disagreement, or whether it is just ambition, or that you've identified that you want to learn some more, just go where that you feel that the lessons are. And they're not always comfortable lessons, that you've got to remember. Some of the best lessons are actually very uncomfortable.
That's interesting. And so you've come from obviously that family of clinicians. At university, were you of the mindset of, I'm going to work in a multidisciplinary clinic and eventually own my own multidisciplinary? Or have you ever gone down the route of vitalistic care, or not back pain, or looking at spinal curve correction like CBP, or have you looked into any of those, or were you always mindset into multidisciplinary?
Well, it's funny you should put it like that. I don't understand why multidisciplinary would be contradictory to CBP or vitalistic practices. I don't understand that point, and I'm being obtuse. Okay, I'm doing this on purpose, obviously. And I did touch that on that in the UCA link below on the UCA conference, because ultimately, listen, multidisciplinary care is not about denying the source of the meaning of what you do. In fact, it's the exact opposite, in my opinion. In my opinion, chiropractic care is and chiropractic philosophy is so big, so enveloping, so all dominant as a thought process, as a healthcare philosophy, that I just came to the realization that I couldn't own all of that by myself. I couldn't deliver all of that. But this is where you got to understand. I grew up with GPs and nurses and surgeons and chiropractors that graduated from Palmer, from ACC, from Sherman. Very, very different attitudes towards their working life. And all I could see was all of these people were doing great clinical work with very happy patients who admired and gave these people authority, and who were very happy to pay them for their work. That's all I could see. So it made no sense to me to say that person is right and that person is wrong, because they were all doing well. So therefore, I started to think more along the lines of, okay, so if all of these things work to a degree, is it possible that bringing some of these things together in some people whenever it is necessary would work better? That was basically the only thinking behind it. Does 1 and 1 make 2, or does it make 3? And as it turns out, if you have 1 and the other 1 then it actually can make 5 or 6,
Mm.
as long as you get both of those ones right. And that's really what the MDT thing is about. And fundamentally, I subscribe very much to the view that subluxations can be mental, they can be physical, they can be physiological. Now, I don't know about you, Lewis, but I'm not a stupid bloke, but I can't own all of that stuff. I can't understand that all of these landscapes all of the time. And especially I came to the realization that in order to be a great chiropractor, one that was adjusting mental subluxations as well as physical ones, as well as physiological ones, that I would need to become a very proficient counselor psychologist. I would need to become a really good podiatrist. I would need to become a super duper adjuster. I would have to be a really good diagnostician, and so on and so on and so on. And best will in the world, not only would I be 50 by the time I could start practicing and have a debt of like 10 million pounds, but I also would have like 3-hour appointment times. Now, who's going to pay you for that? How is that going to work? The business model doesn't work. So that's when I started getting inspired primarily by the work of my uncle Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre Meersseman, Dr. Meersseman, a great individual, a phenomenal guy who's still practicing to this day, by the way, and who would welcome anyone knocking on his door. One of the most astonishing things, and again, that reiterates what I was just saying at the very beginning of this video, he will often say to me, and historically in the past he did at least, that he was always surprised how very few students come knocking on his door. And I would say, again, please fix that. You know, podcasts like this are helping a great deal in making that message clear. But please, audience, listen to it. Just go knocking on the doors of people that you're interested in. And Jean-Pierre basically invented and developed the Milanello, the AC Milan MilanLab concept, which was the first of its type, and it's actually still world leading. And what they did was just incarnate the chiropractic philosophy as I understand it. So they have psychologists, they have biomechanicians, they've got nutritionists and physiologists, they do blood tests, they do this, that, and the next thing. And they would basically be looking at all of these things as markers. And I found the idea really interesting, not to mention the results. And that's where my view on MDTs comes from. It's not as an alternative to vitalism or CBP or anything like that. It is basically, I just want to be a chiropractor. But a chiropractor, I don't understand how I, as a sole individual, can be a true chiropractor. I feel that because of my mental limitations, my intellectual limitations, my physical limitations, my fiscal limitations, I feel that I need to work with other people who are better skilled at delivering other adjustments, non-spinal adjustments. I can manage an individual. I can manage a patient. I can help assuage their anxieties, their health fears. I can motivate them sometimes, but to say that I can deal with PTSD or with multiple personality disorder or with other complex psychological phenomena, or identifying exactly what physiological thing is in imbalance, whether it's a vitamin D adjustment that is required, or whether there's some major issues with the thyroid. I don't know that, and I need experts, and that's what I wanted to bring to my own life. I wanted to be able to deliver that kind of care to my patients and stand for that. So to me, that's what chiropractic is. I just wanted to be a chiropractor. That's why I had to have an MDT.
And so what you're saying is you deal with the physical subluxation, you adjust, you allow the emotional therapist to help with the thoughts. So you got your thoughts, traumas and toxins, emotional, physical, chemical. You deal with the physical, the traumas, and then you allow the other practitioners within your clinic to help with. So they're kind of living the chiropractic lifestyle, the triune, but you're delivering the spinal adjustment, they're delivering the adjustment in another way.
Yeah, so more or less, yes. There's a slight variation on that, which is that I invented whatever. I don't even know anymore who's done what, to be honest with you. But we kind of manifested the concept of the case manager. And the case manager is essentially the individual to whom the patient first reaches out and trusts. So, for example, you want to see, you've got it in your mind, you have had a positive experience with a chiropractor in the past. And you come knocking on my door wanting to see a chiropractor. Okay, so that's the concept of patient choice in the process of identifying what they want, trust, need, whatever they understand themselves to be in need of. Now, that person needs to have the fairness and the ethos to approach that patient who has identified them as the person they need, to be able to say, listen, I might not be the person that you need. I'm flattered that you believe that, but I may not be. So let's just look at the situation before we jump to that conclusion. So what you then get into is this situation where that actually you need to know your own limitations really, really well. You need to also know what you're good at and what you enjoy as a clinician. You know, again, that's kind of referring to the article that was published a few weeks ago. Because, you know, for me, if you're not having fun in practice, you're doing it all wrong. You know, you're really going to shoot yourself in the foot, and you will be dead in the water very, very soon. Both intellectually and emotionally, not to mention financially. So I just want to manifest that relationship with my patients. That is, yes, I acknowledge that you think that I'm the right person for you. Maybe because somebody said so. Maybe somebody else said, you must go and see, you know, Lewis because he's amazing. He did a fantastic job for me. That's great. And your ego will love that. But you got to be careful, you know, and you got to go, am I actually the right person for this person? Do we speak the same language? Are we the same, you know, the same flavor? And that's another thing with the whole case manager concept, because basically we distribute our case workers according to, you've got skill sets, you've got interests, and you've got flavors. So, for example, as a chiropractor, I'm very pragmatic. I have a very straight style, doesn't suit everyone. I obviously waffle a lot. I use storytelling to explain things to people. Works for some people, doesn't work for others. So that's the flavor. And my interest is in chronic pain, particularly chronic low back pain. And I have other chiropractors in my practice that are interested in acute pain, and other ones that are interested in in chronic neck pain. And I've got osteopaths that are interested in migraines. Because you see, again, you've got to be able to end up doing the stuff you're interested in. The stuff that you love, it will emanate. You know, people will come to recognize you as both skilled and interested, because you are genuinely interested, which again is going to have a very beneficial effect on your relationship with your work, which is then going to have a beneficial effect on the relationship your work has with you. And so the whole thing of the case manager is just to say, welcome to my office. Let's have a look at the situation. Thank you for choosing me. Yes, I am the right person. No, I'm not the right person. Yes, I am the right person, but there are others that need to be involved as well. And then we go from there. So the case manager is a bridge in between the concepts that you're talking about there, that we brought in order to clean that mess up a little bit, if that makes sense.
That's really interesting. And I think you did touch upon it in the UCA, but like you've explained it so well and easy there for like everyone to understand the concept behind multidisciplinary. Like, so you're personally a chiropractor working alongside other practitioners in a big clinic that cares about the patient, and it makes sense. I think a light bulb just went off in my head.
Good. Well, I'm pleased. And ultimately, you know, the thing is, this is why we need to have these conversations. This is what I'm loving about what's going on with technology. You know, we're having conferences with people on the other side of the world, and enabling 50 people to join in the chat, just to listen to people banter ideas around. It's never been any more exciting than this. The gift of technology in this era, enabling us to have these conversations without really that much trouble, being able to distribute it online and sharing these discussions. This is why I'm dying to share it with all of you, because I was very lucky. I was extremely lucky of being pestered by my entire family and having to listen in on these conversations that, quite frankly, at times bored me to tears. But in hindsight, I'm so pleased that I had that luxury, because back in those days, we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have Teams, we didn't have digital recordings of anything. This was completely impossible. And I think one of the things that we have to do as an industry is become clearer about what our mission is and what our identity is. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation about identity and all the rest of it, and there's been cycles between vitality and evidence-based as if they're opposite things. That's complete rubbish. These divisions that are being created by some people is entirely fictional and has nothing to do with the core of the actual discussion. Yeah. And that I object to, and this kind of pseudo moral high ground that especially the so-called evidence-based practitioners are waving around against the vitalists is just complete and utter pants. Because every time that I go and have these conversations on the research and the evidence-based side of things, I kind of go, so what are your outcomes? Where are your data? Where are your stats? Oh, we don't keep them. Okay, so where do you get your arrogance from? Where do you get this moral high ground, this high horse that you're sitting on? Where do you get it from? Because the only reason why I would ever allow myself to have any sense of moral high ground is if my results are better than yours.
Yeah.
And that's it, because we are service providers, we are outcome providers. And actually that is a point of discussion. Are we outcome providers or are we service providers? And for me, I'm an outcome provider. So you could argue that is a difference. That is a real point of discussion.
It's a really good point of discussion. It's not come up much on the podcast, and like that link between the mechanistic evidence-based, the vitalistic, holistic kind of split. And I've grown so much since having this podcast and talking to people. I think that's where you learn the most, by talking to different people, because you understand that our aim in chiropractic is exactly the same. I started off school biomechanical, mechanistic, evidence-based.
Yeah.
I got real deep into philosophy in year 3-4. Green books were like my best friend, and I became really vitalistic, and I was like, oh, BCA, no, blah, blah, blah. And then it was terrible. And then in year 4, I started this podcast and I started talking to everyone under the sun. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've fallen for the trap twice. I fell for the trap when I started and I was like, I'm pain-based and blah, blah, blah. I hate vitalistic. What are they on about? And then I went the other way, and now I'm understanding the middle of it. It's such a fun journey to go on, which is why these conversations, like you said, are so important to have, because once people understand we're actually all in the same game, we don't need to be hating on each other. It's just, but we don't understand the other person. We don't understand what they're doing and the reason behind it, even though it's all meaning well. We all love chiropractic, just in a slightly different way, but we all can agree on the same thing, that chiropractic is amazing.
So I would almost agree with you.
Go on.
Almost. And the reason I'm saying this is this. What I've noticed over the years is that division is usually created by people who perceive that they have something to gain from destabilizing unity. Now, I'm stating the obvious here. This is the whole divide et impera, divide and conquer thing.
Yeah.
Right? But you have to remember that there are some people out there who what I would call are career politicians. They feel inclined to create an identity behind which people can rally themselves in order to give significance and meaning to their own existence and being. Now, be very wary of that, because more often than not, that the narrative behind the division only serves one purpose, and that is to keep those people in a job. So be very wary of political animals that are just being in politics to go round and round in circle. And these are the people that you see going and staying on going from one chair to another chair to another chair. Okay, and these are people who and they mean well. Don't get me wrong. I genuinely believe that they mean well, and I genuinely believe that they have constructive agendas to bring to the table. I'm not dismissing that there is a lot of value being brought to the table there, but be very careful in putting too much weight to the narrative behind division. So those are people that I usually go, you know what, you go and do your job, but just stay away from my profession. Organize, administrate. I don't need your opinion. Okay, you're not in a position to give me an opinion on how I should do things. A GCC, for example, that's a different thing, because they administrate your license to practice. And I have a lot of respect for them, by the way, because it's a damn hard job what they're doing, and it's a really annoying job to boot. You try and do that for chiropractors, right? Let's face it, we all have opinions about a million different things, which really doesn't help. These guys are just trying their best. You know, it's a really hard. It's like herding cats trying to organize chiropractors. And we are a very young profession, you know, so that's part of the price that we pay, is this kind of slightly sense of chaos. But do not buy into the division. The division isn't real, as you've already noticed twice over by the sounds of things. And you know, I've seen good friends of mine, like seriously, really good friends of mine, that were so strong on philosophy and ethos, and they understood they had a mission, and they got derailed by the pursuit of evidence, which isn't there really. Not to a sufficient degree to kind of go, oh, okay, I'm going to write a treatment protocol based on the evidence that has been researched and that shows me that this works better than that. That doesn't exist. And then on the other hand, people that were very, very strong clinically, very strong diagnostically, technically, you know, all of those really, they could quote you papers left, right, and center, but who then lost heart with practicing in that way, and then went all the way over too far sometimes into the let's call it vitalistic realm, but purely because you used it as a point of reference. Because I don't actually agree that that's what they're doing, and they get lost in the financial models. You know, because make no mistake, if I was going to levy a criticism at the let's call it again, I don't like the terminology that we're using here, but the vitalistic end.
What would you call it?
Do you know what? I don't understand what those two groups are to begin with, because I don't believe in them. I see straight through them, and I think that both parties are lying to each other and one another. That's my honest opinion.
I love it. Okay, you were saying.
Yeah, no, and you know, with the so where that some people are using philosophy, and to be honest with you, some very torturous solipsistic thought loops in order to justify certain clinical behaviors that really only serve one real purpose, and that is financial gain. And you know, it's controversial, it's not a happy conversation, but it's true and it's real, and it shouldn't happen. But you know what, if we were doing good work more, and working and delivering outcomes more, there would be no issue with business. We would be flooded. We'd be all so busy that we can't even, you know, keep it together. Because remember, there's only what, 3,500 of us. Come on, you know.
It's true. I love it. Like, the conversations we're having are so deep on, like, it's brilliant. And like chiropractic, I think a lot of students and new grads, this is going to be like their first taste of that, like, reality call, because you get told this. I was certainly told this kind of stuff in university. We had like a scale, like, of vitalistic, mechanistic, like evidence-based, and it was all it was literally like a pyramid, and we were told this at school, at chiropractic college, and so it's kind of it's taught to you, and you've put it so elegantly, like, and you've explained it really well that I think hopefully people will understand it. It's like lit a light bulb in me, and I really appreciate the way that you've gone about explaining it. Like, it just makes sense. I'd like to move on to a bit where I really like this part. So a part of this podcast is to ask like a bit of like resources and advice from the chiropractor on the show. So if you had to pick 3 top resources, it can be books, podcasts, people you speak to, someone you observed, conferences, seminars, anything. If you had to pick 3 resources for a student, new grad, to have a look at, that maybe the 3 things that come to your mind first, what would they be for them to have a little look at, have a read, have a listen? Like, what would it be?
Okay, so obviously, as I'm sure you're already expecting, I'm probably not going to be giving the answer that you're looking for. The first thing that I would say is that you need to learn to listen to your patient. Forget everything else. Forget everything else. Nothing else matters when that patient is talking. You might think that it does, but it doesn't. That is your number 1 resource over everything else. Learn to freaking listen, which is not easy, by the way, because that's an invitation to observe your own responses to their statements. You see, patients come to doctors to be healed. The reality is that the healing really is only possible once the patients have healed the doctor. And what I mean by that is that you have to work through your observations. I like this type of patient. Why? Where is it that you're connecting with? Are they playing to your ego? Are are they male? Are they female? Are they vulnerable? Are they laddish? What is that telling you? The people that surround you, especially those that have been referred to you, by the way, are the ones that are going to teach you the most about yourself. If you are willing to observe your own responses to what they're saying whilst simultaneously listening to them, which is why it's so hard. So your number 1 resource is your patients.
So like self-analysis?
Self-analysis and very critical self-analysis, by the way. It's painful.
I was going to say, that sounds really... And okay, so interestingly then, how would you do that in terms of like, one of the things that comes to my mind, I do a little bit of journaling and I do a little bit of meditation stuff and reflection on my week at work or a day at work. How would you specifically go about this critical self-analysis of that communication with the patient?
Like that.
Yeah.
Like that. I journaled for years. I still do to a degree. I would write out my entire conversations. This person I would speak to in that way, that person I would speak to in this way, to try and understand what they were triggering in me, why I was creating different responses to different people, which is appropriate, by the way, because different people, different language, right? You got to understand what you are to those people. And one of the things that you end up finding is that when you are doing that work, using the resource in front of you, that patient who's telling you a story that is not only giving you information to make clinical decisions, but also gives you understanding of their universe, the world in which that they function, you yourself will end up becoming what that patient needs you to be in that moment. And that's an incredible gift, to be given that opportunity to be in front of people and live like that, to learn by proxy, vicariously living through other people's mistakes and growing through other people's errors is just Oh man, I mean, if as a healthcare provider, you're not grateful every day for being given the opportunity to become a better person by the end of the day than you were in the morning, then you're doing the wrong thing. You're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. You need to rethink your life priorities. So that's what I mean by this. It's your primary resource, without a doubt.
Oh, I
For
love
me.
that. That's amazing. That's brilliant. That's gold standard. I love that.
And that's one of the reasons why, you know, when you're talking to when you're talking about being busy and you're talking about numbers and patient visits and money and all the rest of it, you've completely lost me. Those things are pointless. I've worked with some of the most financially lucrative chiropractors in the world. And I'll tell you one thing that they've all said to me, and that is that they never worked for money.
Wow.
And these are people that are still working, that still want to get up every morning and are still wanting to go and practice. Yeah, okay, you know, you can work in a different way and make more money in the short term, but soon enough you'll be burnt out, you lose your soul, you're just empty, you don't feel like it anymore, and you just start trading on stocks, or you start buying property and all the rest of it, like some of our colleagues do.
It's interesting. Like, wow. So that gets me thinking a bit, actually. That's really interesting. I know so many people. Yeah.
The second, you asked for 3 resources, right? So the second resource is not a resource as such, but it's a book that I believe that everybody should read, and not just read, like really understand. And in actual fact, I'm sorry that I'm in my home office now, because it's actually my clinic office. And that is Darwin's work, and Darwin discussing any aspect of evolution is something that every clinician, whether chiropractor or otherwise, needs to completely own into the last fiber of their soul.
Is the name of the book Darwin's work?
No. So Darwin wrote actually a number of books on evolution, but it's actually the evolution by natural selection. That's the one that everybody should read. But let me just explain to you that there's no need for you to read the old schooly version that is quasi unreadable. You need to understand the fiber of evolution and why it matters. And the reason why you need to do that is because you need to understand why people are people. Why their heart breaks when they don't feel loved and appreciated. Why they develop PTSD when something happens to them. Why they somatize into physical events certain things that are emotional events. Why people make decisions that are bad for them, and why they hurt themselves in a particular way. Oddities of behavior, things that we would classically discuss as abnormal, are not abnormal. There's no such thing as normal and abnormal. There's just common and uncommon. Abnormal is a complete invention of the brain that believes that there's such a thing as free will and all the rest of it. And it's complete rubbish. It's not true. So you got to understand that, you know, variation across the spectrum is the way forward. You know, treating autism, are you mad? Why would you even do that? An autistic brain is just a different brain type, in the same way as an ADHD brain type is a different brain type, and so on and so on. These are not normal versus abnormal. These are not pathologies. These are not diseases that need to be cured. These are variables that need to be appreciated for what they are. Autistic traits exist because they have very, very strong survival values and benefits. You know, in the same way as anxiety, patients will tell me, oh, you know, I suffer with anxiety. Yeah, and what does that mean to you? Oh, there's something wrong with me. No, there isn't. You've got an anxious brain type, and that anxious brain type, I personally prefer the word hypervigilant. You have a hypervigilant brain type. You're the one who will be looking out in the center of the village, who will be guarding the grain stores, who will be listening out for the mice rattling away and trying to nibble a few a few grains every other day, and depleting the resources of the village. And great, okay, on the outskirts of the village, you've got your heroes, you've got your warriors, you've got your scared of nothing guys and girls, and they get all the street cred, right? Because they go to battle, and we celebrate our victorious warriors, and we mourn our fallen soldiers, quite rightly. But hang on a minute, they're just insane. They have a tendency towards a hyper risk seeking behavior, addictive behaviors, nicotine, cocaine, sex addiction, porn addiction, workaholism. That's what these people suffer with every day. And the anxious or the hypervigilant brain type, if you put them in a situation where they have to listen out for everything that could possibly be wrong, then they will actually be really happy, because their value, their brain type, is put to good use. And what understanding evolution does, really understanding evolution does, is it helps you to understand that this whole idea of normative stuff and good posture or good function or whatever the hell else we come up with in these conversations, complete rubbish. These are variations. We've got to understand and respect those variations.
I love your explanations of things. It's brilliant. You're such, like you said at the start, you're such a good storyteller. Because I find myself, I'm like, oh, brilliant. Like you said, oh, number 2. And then I just realized I creeped like really close, and I was getting like really close. And I was like, oh my God, what he's saying makes complete sense. It's really interesting.
I see this is one of the reasons why I'm a huge fan of the work of people like Professor David Newell. Dave Newell has done some amazing work on understanding storytelling and the value of storytelling in communication. And he's looking at context, placebo, nocebo, contextually aided recovery. Yet somehow people are losing their shit over the idea that it is important. What a pile of nonsense. You know what? I set up a clinic in the countryside in a Georgian farmhouse. Why? Because as soon as you walk up there, people go, okay, I'm in the right place. I'm safe. Yeah. I've had a problem for 10, 15 years, but this place looks like a place where I'm safe. Do you think that people with those kind of problems will go to a chiropractor that is operating? And again, nothing wrong with that, by the way, just different audience. But do you think that people with a 10, 15-year history of recurring discal degenerative disc disease, etc., are going to go to a chiropractor that is working in the side room of a hair salon? No. And so setting and the scene are incredibly important, just to be given the opportunity to perform the chiropractic miracle, just to be given allowance to crack on, excuse the pun, and do something of use for that patient. Now you could say, okay, well, listen, that's just wrong. People shouldn't be judgmental, etc., etc. Okay, good luck. I'm out, because that's something you're not going to fix. So you do have to work with perception. You do have to work with context, and you have to harvest all of those goodies and make sure you invest them straight into what you're doing, because the only thing that matters is, are you doing everything to make this patient get better sooner, faster, with greater reliability, with greater level of independence? That's the only thing that matters. And if the answer is no to any of those questions, again, you're doing it wrong. You've got to rethink your life and rethink about why you're doing this stuff.
So understanding that evolution. Wow. Brilliant. Right. Number 3, I need to hear it. Your third one, and then we'll wrap it up. But I need to hear it now. And I'm going to start close. Here we go.
So number 3 is you need somebody in your life. And this is one of the hardest out of everything, and something that I probably wouldn't expect most of your audience to get into as such, because new grads, etc., tend to be younger. But you need to find someone who you can give a veto right. Now, what I mean by that is, so in my case, that's my wife. Okay. In my case, my wife is the only person who can say no to me. Okay. And it's really important that you have somebody like that in your life, because you might think that you're really good at assessing where you're at as an individual, what your stress levels are, what you can cope with, what you can't cope with, all the rest of it. And I think particularly boys are really bad at recognizing their own deficiencies, shortcomings, whatever it's called. And you need somebody in your life that you listen to, even if you really, really, really don't want to. And that person needs to understand the importance of what they're being given. They need to understand that being given the veto, it basically means I desperately want to do this and no one's going to stop me. But if that person with the veto turns around and goes, no, it's not good for you, then you got to listen and you got to stop.
Wow.
That's is strong. Possibly one of your strongest and most important self-preservation resources that you could ever have, but you need one. Obviously, you would assume that that could be somebody like your best friend or a life partner or somebody that really knows you well, but at the same time also understands what your dreams and aspirations are. So this is somebody that you need to be very, very close to, and who understands that you are willing to dig that deep for that outcome. And this is the person that once you look like you're starting to dig a bit too deep for your own good, that they can turn around and say, no, you got to stop. And again, it might not be relevant to a lot of your audience, but it will become relevant at some point. And that's one of the reasons why you really got to choose your life partner well. Again, sadly, I myself, in fact, I didn't get divorced, but there were relationships in the past where that my desire to be this or that chiropractor, and sometimes that would revolve around authority, sometimes that would revolve around ego, sometimes that would revolve around money, would actually end up destroying my relationships. Wow. And you need to find someone who can safeguard you against yourself, because you will go places to become the best clinician that you can be. You will go to dark places. Patients will push you. They will make you find things in yourself that you really don't want to talk to anyone about, that you really find a bit dirty about yourself and that you're even ashamed of. Everyone has those, and anybody who says that they don't is lying. It's as simple as that. Everyone has those. So you need someone, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a psychologist, especially when you start to get a few years in, you've got 15, 20 years in, down, you need someone that you can go, am I actually still sane? And there's two reasons for that. One, because, you do get pushed in every direction emotionally and even physically, but you also need to be able to give yourself some safe space. We do so much to give our patients safe space, to enable them to express themselves and be their authentic self. But we spend very, very little time on being our own authentic self. And that's dangerous. That's the stuff that makes people become really jaded after 15, 20 years in practice. Again, something that I see, and that's when they start looking at associates and all the rest of it to reduce their own workload and blah. And again, sometimes that is the right thing to do. It doesn't mean that everybody who's scaling back on practice after 15, 20 years falls in this category. Don't make that simplistic assumption. Sometimes that's what life needs. You might have children and you want to scale back a little bit to spend more time with them, etc. And again, that's the right thing to do. But for those people that are getting jaded, that are getting maybe even a little bit cynical or sarcastic, that's very much about having lost your sense of self-care and your own who you are and what you're about. There's nothing wrong with staying true to yourself and trying to build a practice that aligns itself, again, excuse the pun, with your value and your true self. Because the rest doesn't matter. Your opinion of my practice, and I mean this politely, doesn't matter to me. I genuinely, I don't care. I just enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm proud of my team, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing. And if it takes your approval, wonderful. I'll tell you everything that I know. And if it doesn't, again, I would love to know why, because I'd love you to teach me and to help me grow. and help me understand what other viewpoints there are that would perhaps make me reconsider. I want to know that. Don't tell me what I do right. Tell me what I do wrong. I already know what I'm doing right. It's utterly uninteresting. So it's, you know what I mean? So in a long-winded way, Darwin, your wife, or in my case, my wife, or somebody that has your veto, and you got to stay true to yourself.
Listen to the patient.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. They were some deep and powerful ones. I love it. Like, brilliant. And so many good nuggets of information and resources and tips and like advice from, like you say, you graduated like way back and you've been in practice for 20.
Easy on the way back there, kiddo.
Sorry, I'll cough over that one. You're
19 years. 19 years in August there will be. And the thing is, listen, it's the life that I've chosen is not chiropractic. It's my version of my passion for my understanding of chiropractic.
That's what everyone should be doing.
And the rest, whether you're a dentist, whether you're a GP, whether you're selling flowers on the street or whether you're selling hot dogs, it's the same bloody principle. It's everybody's so overly obsessed about some of the macro stuff that they look at the 10% that they think matters, but forget about the 90% around it, and then wonder why the hell they're not enjoying what they're doing, or why they're not succeeding in what they're doing, or whatever, but just stay true to yourself. That is the key to all of it, to you, to the patient. That's what it's all about.
That's so wonderful, and like it's such a brilliant way to like start wrapping things up. Like, everything you've said here makes total sense. I think people will struggle to disagree with anything that you've said here. You've backed it up with information and a story and reasoning behind everything that you're doing. It's just so amazing, all the information that and like I'd love to pick your brains for longer, but I just it'd be crazy. We'd do like hours and hours long.
Anytime. And the same to your audience. I'll send you a Teams link and we can chat and we can go through things, because these things are so important. There is the profession is, in my opinion, at its most exciting point in the entire history of our profession.
Oh, hello. Oh no.
In a multidisciplinary setting, to deliver the true chiropractic ideology while still being able to be a true chiropractor in the process, and adjusting people and touching lives and improving lives every day. It's never been better than right now. I would love to be in your shoes and graduate today. You boys and girls have got such an exciting time ahead. But the only problem, and it is a very serious problem, which I would invite all of your colleagues to really embrace, and is that you've got to kick the old guard into touch. You've got to be disagreeing with us. You've got to be going, yeah, but hang on a minute. You're talking about, chiropractic, and you're talking about doing this, that, and the next thing, but you're not doing it. You're talking about the triune. Where is your triune? What are you doing? And on the other hand, you're talking about evidence and all the rest of it. Where is your evidence? You're just talking about it. You're not actually presenting it.
So true. Call people out. Yeah.
So this is the time to go and rock and roll, and it's never been better. We've got a situation where that the private sector is becoming more and more acknowledged. In 2003, when I first started practicing in rugby, I literally had patients telling me that their GP said that they shouldn't come to see chiropractor.
Or it still happens now, I think.
Well, in my area, they don't have the balls to say that anymore, because nowadays but no, because we've got, listen, this is the truth, right? We've got the neurosurgical department in local hospitals sending their patients to us before they operate, because if we do our work and our prehab and we adjust them and we do all the things that are needed in order to help them along, 8 out of 10 they don't need to operate on anymore, and the 2 that they do operate on, they get better results and fewer failed back syndrome. So they're happy. They're happy like little piglets in proverbial muck, because their stats are looking great and they're having to operate less.
Yeah.
Now that's what we're talking about. But again, caveat,
yeah.
I am an outcome-driven chiropractor.
Yeah. Right. So much information.
Sorry.
I'm gonna have to listen to this back like so many times. That's brilliant. That's like obviously, like, thank you so much for sharing all of these bits. It's phenomenal. If people want to get in contact with you, firstly, where is your clinic, and can people come and observe, and can people message you, and how?
Okay, so in order of response there, the practice is in a place called Hatton. It's between Coventry and Birmingham. I know that doesn't sound like the most exciting place in the world, but it's absolutely gorgeous.
Is it near Hatton Country World?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's basically 500 yards down from there.
I went there like a few months ago.
There you go. You should have been knocking on the door, you see. And so it's in bang slap in the middle of the West Midlands. Very easy to get to from any part in the country, really, because we've got Birmingham International Railway Station that's 15 minutes away. We've got Parkway, we've got the airports, etc. So I'm very fortunate that a lot of chiropractors and actually non-chiropractors too, from all over the UK and across the world, come and have a little look at our practice every so often, which is really exciting for us too. So it's in the West Midlands, it's in Warwickshire, it's in Hatton. The clinics are called core clinics, and you are very, very welcome to reach out. I like with you, please don't take it personally if I can't per se meet a particular deadline, etc. It's just that I love having these conversations, but I do have a team of 28 people that I manage, and I'm a managing director for, as well as a clinical director. And on top of that, I've got a family with 5 children, and whilst my wife is very understanding and very tolerant, just understand that sometimes time can be short. And the best way to get in touch with me, to be honest with you, it's probably via email. Very happy to share that here, and it's my name, Stefaan, Stefaan @coreclinics.co.uk, and again,
put it down below.
Yeah, exactly. And send me an email. If I don't respond to it within 48 hours, send me another one. And you know what? I apologize. I'm really sorry. I can be a little bit shit, if you like, on some of these things, but I really do try my best, and sometimes it still comes up short, but I hope you can all forgive me of that. And if you do, and you want to come over, or you want to have a conversation over Teams, I'll send you a link. We can have a chat. You can ask me any questions, but do me one favor. If anybody ever wants to get in touch, do me one favor, and it is try to find something that we're doing wrong. Open up with that. I'd love to understand where or why people might perceive or understand that we're doing something wrong. And that might be and that might be twofold, right? It might be because it's actually that we're doing it wrong, or it's because we're explaining it badly. And then I need to explain it better.
That's interesting. Right? That's cool.
So either way, I would welcome that. So yeah, email would definitely be the best way, and you're always welcome.
Brilliant. I'll pop all that stuff in the description below. People can have a look and email you away and point out all your flaws.
And great stuff for organizing this, Lewis. These kind of things have a significant impact. We're talking about a small profession. I don't know what the distribution is on your podcasts, but even if more than one person looks at it, I'll be really pleased, because ultimately we've got to do this. There's such a huge opportunity. We'd be mugs to miss it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah,
thank you.
We're getting there. We've got a few thousand listeners, which is cool.
Brilliant.
Amazing. All right, thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your knowledge. It's wonderful, and again, I just can't be thankful enough, and for giving your time on the bank holiday weekend as well.
Anytime. Absolute pleasure, mate.
Cheers.